Well, guys, it looks like I'm on here alone again. And topic for this week is the HR psychology shit tests. Feminists have been taking over the HR departments and the psychological field of work, place psychology, driven by feminist women. A lot of the kids in MGTOW don't know about this because they just weren't raised in that environment. But in the 90s, you used to be able to grab a newspaper and you used to be able to look through the newspaper and find some jobs in your local town. Or you could just walk into a business and ask them for an application, fill it out, and you might get a job on the spot. And that was the way it used to be. Now you have to go onto a website and turn in your resume, and you never even know if the person that you've turned the resume into will even look at your resume. And you don't get any clarification unless somebody calls you back. And then if they call you back online, in many cases you'll have to take a test, some kind of a psychological test. And then you may have to take another test. Then you may have to come in for an interview. Then you may have to come in for a second interview, and even a third. And this was done just in the last 15, 16 years. I left for Japan in 2000. And when I left for Japan, you could very easily get a job. And this system that's been put in place is locking down the American workforce and making it very difficult for you to find work. And going to college, I heard about in psychology a new form of psychology that has only been around for about 10 or 11 years. And it started a long time before that, but it's only gained popularity recently. And this form of psychology, most people will know that psychology departments are primarily done through women. Most women run the psychology departments and are mainly the women in the psychology departments. And this is the fastest growing psychology field in the psychology departments. They actually make the most money as well out of school when you get your degrees. What these departments are doing is you may not even know that you work for a company that's all male, but there's some HR issues that you don't know about because you're just a worker, and they will actually call up one of these psychologists and pay them a lot of money to come in and find out how to get more productivity out of you, how to get you to feel better with working longer hours, what they need to do to get you to work longer hours more efficiently and not complain. And these fields are dominated by women. And what they're doing is they're coming in the back door and destroying companies little by little and destroying productivity and weaving their little feminist controls into every business and every company. And most studies will show you that when feminists or women get into power in most companies, it heads south. Profits and everything head south because women are typically not minded. Their mind just doesn't work in the same way that a man does for profits and success. That's the way they think is completely different. And they don't focus typically on profits and profitability. They focus on feels. It matters about feels, how they feel in the business. And what's happening is more and more people are starting to become less willing to work, and less because of these and that's why they're calling them in more and more, because more and more people are deciding they don't want to work, that they don't want to have anything to do with the females and with working with this feminine mindset that's coming into work. You might be working at a mechanic shop or a welding company or something that would typically be a male dominated workforce, yet the company is ran like there's a woman running it. And when you see that and you feel that in your job, that's why you see and feel that, is these HR departments have asked these psychological shit tests to be indoctrinated into their company. And it's almost a prerequisite to have a company anymore, that even if your company is entirely male and there might be one female on the staff that's the secretary that answers the phones, all of the men have to go through the HR department, and they have to take tests, and they have to do videos and about sex and sex discrimination and all this other bullshit that you have to go through. So it puts men on their heels immediately and makes most men feel like you're the criminal. And most men will realize that we feel like we're guilty till proven innocent. And this is the new psychological departments that have came out, the psychological field, and that's what they're doing. A few weeks ago, I talked about a man who was in college and had to take a video course on not raping, because as feminists like to say, we have to teach men not to rape. And this criminalization of men and all women are princesses has got to stop. But this is what feminists are trying to do. It's also the reason why feminists hate the transgender community, as I keep talking about, because women nowadays, we're getting further and further away from being feminine, where transgender women are getting closer and closer to being what men expect of women. And this is destroying their little hope that all men are dogs and all men should be treated like dogs, and we're all rapists. And the problem that I find is when you get into these workplace environments where there's no women, or even if there is a woman, men tend to walk on eggshells. And when you're in a work session or you're in a boardroom and you're talking to these women, you will have to watch what you say, because their feels might get hurt. And in these psychology departments, they're pressing women to not go into fields that are like early childhood development and psychology for mentally ill people. They are actually convincing women to go into this field for money, because you can make a lot of money in this field. And it actually, like I say, it's the fastest growing field in psychology. And these HR departments that are springing up all over and having to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars. And you can even get this while you're in college. You can actually have this pay for your college. They asked me to do it, in fact, when I was doing my college. And what they do is they hire these people out of college with like bachelor's degrees and master's degrees to come into work environments and try to figure out ways to make the company run better, what a feminist or a woman considers running better, which usually ends up hurting productivity and making it harder for people to make money and making things take longer. And what their concern is isn't the work. Their concern is the feels. How does everybody feel? You know, you should make sure that you keep track of certain people and make sure that they don't make other people feel bad, and you know, these kind of things, instead of getting work done. You know, instead of trying to come up with real ways to make people work longer or work harder in shorter amounts of time, because that's what really people should be wanting to do. You should be able to work. This is something that I don't understand, where people can't get behind it in the US. You should be able to work a 9 to 5 job in the United States for 40 hours a week. And with that job, no matter what you're doing, you should at least be able to pay for a studio apartment, gas in your vehicle, and your cell phone and food, and maybe be able to save up a little bit of money. But the way we're going now, and this is entirely to do with the government and the overrun of these feminists, because they're even in the government. They're getting this HR psychology shit test stuff in the government as well. It's making it harder for people to live now, because as time has went on, back in the 80s and 90s, when I first started working, it was very easy to find jobs. I could easily go out and just walk into any mechanic shop in town. I could, like, if I needed a job, I could just walk down the street from the job that I just quit or that I just got fired from, and I wouldn't even need a resume. I could just walk into a place, grab a application, and I could fill it out, and maybe the first shop that I went to, I might get hired at, you know, and that's the way it used to be. But with these HR departments, it's become very kind of like a call center. That's basically how they want it now, where it's very impersonal. There's nobody that you talk to. You call up their company and you get a service person and an electronic message, and you don't know if they've ever actually looked at your resume. And they'll give you the runaround. If you do call them and actually get somebody on the phone, they'll tell you something like, the HR department is looking at all the applications and we'll get back to you as soon as we make a decision. And what they mean is, we'll get back to you as soon as we make a decision if you're the person that's going to get hired. If you're not, then you won't ever hear back from us again. So you're left in the loop there, worried about whether you're actually going to get hired or not. And this is really disheartening for men nowadays. I've seen so many men that are just, they don't know what to do in any job. They get hired for less and less money to start with, even if you have skills. In my case, I'm a certified welder. I'm ICAR certified for body 3 times. I'm an ASE certified master tech. But you get hired, they start you at very cheap wages, and they treat you like shit because you haven't worked for their company. And all the companies are doing this, and this wasn't really this way back in the 80s and 90s. You had more respect in the work environment. And I can only think that the reason why this has happened is because these HR departments and these women have told these men that this is the way you should be, that you should be trying to military style men, that this is the way you make them work and the way you make them productive, because this is the way they do when they're married and when they have boyfriends. They yell and they whine and they bitch and they moan, and that's how they get their way. So they think that this is how you should get your way as well in a work environment, that if the boss wants you to do something, he should yell and piss and moan and bitch at you and make you feel like you might lose your job tomorrow, even though he's not going to fire you, so that you'll keep up productivity, because that's the way they keep you working at home. And it's becoming very, very evident If you look at this from a MGTOW standpoint, and then you look at your workplace, if you see the way the workplaces are in the United States and in many countries, not just the United States, but I know of the United States and I know of Japan. And the HR stuff isn't over here, but it doesn't have to be. It's just the way our country works over here. It's already this way in Japan. So in America, if you've ever been in a relationship, and obviously some of you guys have, being MGTOWs, usually you get a mouthful of feminist hate and decide to become MGTOW after that. But you know, when you've been in a relationship and then you get in some of these jobs, no matter what you're doing, if it's in an office, a call center, a nursing environment, being a doctor, whatever you're doing, you'll get into these environments and you'll start to feel like your job is like a girlfriend. And that's why a lot of people hate going to work. It used to be back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't that big of a deal to go to work. You just kind of went to work, you did what you had to do, and you went home. And you had fun. But now it feels like you don't want to get out of bed, you know, because you're leaving your girlfriend to go into work where you feel like you have another bitchy girlfriend. And this is the environment they've created. It's kind of like all encompassing in a man's life now, where no matter where you work, you're going to be subject to a feminist mind and to feminist control, because they've sunk their little hooks in all that men do. No matter what men are doing, we have them in our lives. And I told a story before here about me living here in Japan and I live in a triplex, and I have a 2-story house that's attached to another 2-story house that's attached to another 2-story house. The last house is an older man, but the lady who lives next to me is alone, and she constantly thinks it's her duty to tell me to be quiet and I can't do this and I can't do that. So even though I'm here living alone, I'm still subject to a woman and to what I can and can't do in my house, which I've paid for, because I have to worry about what she's going to do and if she's going to call the police. So in work environments, it's the same way. I'll tell you guys a story of a job I worked on. I was working at Walmart when I came back from Japan. And I'd left my wife, I'd separated with her, and I was living at home with my parents. And I was like, geez, this would have been 93, so I'd have been 31. So lucky me, I was 31 living at home with my parents because I had to leave my third wife. And I worked at Walmart. I got a job in the mechanic department because I was the only ASE certified mechanic on staff. There was another girl who didn't know anything about mechanics at all, but she'd worked at the department for about 6 years. She was dating a much older man, and I don't remember whether he worked there or not. I forget what it was, but she had it in her mind that I was hitting on her, and she was dating this other guy that was older, like he was in his 40s and she was like in her 20s, and she told the HR department that I was sexually harassing her. So they moved the only ASE certified tech in their shop and salesman. I was one of their best salesmen, and I'd only worked there for a few weeks, but I was already selling more shit than everyone else because I actually knew how to sell. They moved me to the freezer department. Hey, what's up, Magnus?
Morning, Shi-nu.
Cool. Yeah, I'm talking about the HR departments. I'm sure you know a lot about that.
Oh yeah, I've told quite a few of them to kiss my ass in my time.
Yeah. I'm telling a story about a Walmart that I worked at. Once
continue. I'd hate to interrupt that.
Yeah. Once this woman went to the HR department and told them that I had sexually harassed her, she decided that they called me in and asked me about what had happened. I told them that nothing happened, and they decided to move an ASC certified tech with tons of sales experience from their department into another department of the freezer. So I started stocking freezer shelves as an ASC certified tech, and my pay went down because of this feminist. And
Oh, so little Julie said you had cooties, so they moved you to the back of the class, huh?
yeah, they what it was I'm talking about what we're talking about this week is the HR shit tests, the psychological shit tests, and how these feminist women have basically taken over most companies. And it's only happened in like the last 15, 16 years. Because if you remember, you're probably like me. Back in the 80s, you used to be able to go down to most stores, grab a newspaper, and go find a job. You could even like get fired from one job and like walk down the street and literally just walk into any company that was close to what you were just doing, fill out an application. You might have a job by the end of the day, you know, and it's not like that
Well,
anymore.
yeah, I mean,
You go in to apply
yeah,
for a place and they tell you, oh, we don't have applications here. You have to go online, and you get online and take their online like application, and then they'll send you to a psychological test that you'll have to take, and then they tell you they'll get back to you, and then you wait and you wait and you wait, and nobody ever gets back to you. And if you call them and actually get somebody on the phone, they just say the HR department looks at the resumes and we'll get back to you, and they never do. You know, so you never know if
yeah, they're
anybody's
putting
actually talked to you.
they're putting they're actually putting too much power to hire and fire in the hands of a bunch of women that probably don't even know the actual job that well.
Yeah. Well, like what I was just talking
And that
about is
is,
the thing that we have going on in the US, especially is with these HR departments, a lot of people don't even know that even if you have an entirely male company, that a lot of the rules and regulations that are set up for the HR departments and for the company are brought about by these feminist psychology, because it's the fastest growing field. I was surprised when I was in college getting my PhD and my master's in psychology that this is one of the fastest growing psychological areas, and the most money that you can make is these women who want to come into these companies, no matter what it is, and tell these guys how to get more productivity out of you. And because of the way feminists act, they like when you're with a woman, they constantly berate you and they basically treat you like you're in the military. Like they're constantly trying to get you to do stuff by telling you you suck and whining at you and bitching and pissing and moaning. And this is the way they think that it's you should be getting productivity in a job as well. That how you get a man to work and how you get a man to do something is you berate him and treat him like shit. So this is their
yeah,
psychology
no,
that they brought into the work environment as well, which is making men's lives hell.
well, and the funniest thing is companies like mine, they know better.
Yeah,
They maybe can get away with that shit in the actual office setting,
yeah,
but they won't pull that shit on us, not the drivers, no.
yeah. That's the one nice thing is you guys don't have to worry about that kind of stuff in the truck, you know. But that's the thing. That's the nice thing that gets you away from all that because you've been working in the truck industry for so long that you don't have to really worry about it as much. But like these psychological tests that most people have to take now, that 90% of jobs now aren't in newspapers. They're online, and you have to go online and you have to take, you know, you have to apply online, and you can't like put a resume in there. You have to fill everything out. So they're making you have to jump through all these hoops and make it take longer and longer for people to actually get like hired. And what I had happened to me last week is actually 2 weeks ago. I was applying for a company here selling cars to servicemen, and it's a company that's been around since 1937, and they're in a bunch of different countries. And for some reason, they sell American cars to American servicemen in other countries. So I don't know why they think they need to do that when there's already people to sell to them in that country. But I guess it's easier for them to use the same system and money and whatnot, and it's harder for them to actually buy a car in a foreign country, if you're a serviceman or something, I guess. So whatever. But I have so many skills in that field, over 25 years of experience, like more than 25 years. And
Right.
they had me take a psychological shit test, and then told me that I didn't have enough, I didn't have the right skills, and that their test said that I wouldn't be good for their environment. You know, so this is really hilarious. It makes it really funny because they they're kind of coming, like I was saying earlier, they're coming through the back door, and a lot of men don't even realize that their work environment is being berated by women, by feminist psychologists, because they're getting paid thousands upon thousands of dollars. Some of these girls go through college. They actually can pay for college by, while they're working on their bachelor's degree, getting paid by companies to go in and tell them how to treat their workers and how to make their productivity better. And they come up with their little shit tests, and they tell you you should give these guys tests so that you can find out who's more productive in your job, and tell you who, all this shit of like, who should we fire, who should we keep bullshit. That's all came up by women. That was never a thing before. You wouldn't do that before. You would just, if some guy was not pulling his line, you'd bring him into the office and say, hey, we notice you're not working as hard as you are. If you don't do something, man, we're gonna let you go. And that was the way it was before. Now you just get called into the office and they say, you may not even really been doing anything wrong. You're not working as hard as everybody else, and you didn't even know it because nobody told you. So they pull you into the office and tell you you're fired.
Yeah, they don't even. They a lot of times. I mean, I've heard plenty of horror stories. I can't remember any of them really off the top of my head, but it just seems like they just have this weird system of, if they decide they don't like you, they make up whatever excuse they want to send your ass home.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I say these companies because of the HR system, they've actually, it's became like how I was describing earlier. It's like most guys don't like to spend a lot of time at home, especially after they've been married and they have kids. They'd rather spend their time at work. But a lot of guys, because the way their wife acts at home, they'd want to leave and go to work.
Right,
But when they go to
plus
work,
you
they
you
end
just
up
brought
going to
you just
work with a job that makes them feel like they're actually going to another woman. Because the way the job environment is now, you feel like your job is also another girlfriend because of the way the guys treat you, and that are in the power in the office. They act like women. You know?
Well, you brought up a great point before about the way your women act at home.
Yeah.
Any ladies watching this, so you need to pay attention to that very thought. Most guys would rather stay at work than be at home with you. That
Yeah.
means there's a problem with you. It don't mean there's a
Exactly.
problem with him.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, most guys. I mean, I was talking to a girl today earlier. She wrote this big thing on one of my videos about how men. I put in the video about men, about women and all this stuff, and she got on there and was talking about how she sleeps really well at night because when she gets up in the morning, she's going to go like subjugate men and all this stuff, and she was trying to like make light of it, like it wasn't a thing, you know. And I had to get on there and tell her that, this is kind of how you guys are. This is par for the course. This is what you guys appreciate, is treating men like this. And then there's actually many feminists that they don't want women to in any way look bad. So they've actually petitioned many states to not allow men's shelters for like abuse, because women don't abuse men, even though 68% of spousal abuse is men. And when a man tries to call the police or tell somebody or try to get help, everybody laughs at him. But if a woman makes a false claim, they come and arrest him, and she can get the house, or she can leave the house and go to a shelter. There's hundreds of shelters in every city for women, but there's none. In many cases, for every 1,000 shelters, there might be one for men. In a state, you might have to go to another town 100 miles away just to get into a men's shelter if you feel like you're unsafe in your home environment as a man.
We talked about a lot about that on the last podcast I was on with Dean Esme and Rachel Edwards, and of
Yeah.
course I plugged your channel. I hope you don't mind.
No.
But yeah, we talked about a lot of this. That I think I'm trying to remember exactly how Rachel put it, but it's like it was more about college women, but it's like trying to. I think she said something was about trying to date these women who have the personality of pocket lint.
Yeah, pretty much. That's how they
And
are now.
that's the only that's women don't have to develop a personality anymore, and it's like, well, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah. Well, they've been dropping off more and more stuff. The feminists have allowed them to not, especially because a lot of the feminism stuff started in the early 50s, and it started actually back in the 1800s, but it gained speed in the 60s. So a lot of these kids, these baby boomers and stuff, are actually raising kids. They've raised their kids now to believe this stuff. So these children are coming out now thinking that it's perfectly fine to be like this and to treat men this way, and that men should always be trying to get something from you, you know that you should always be trying to take things from men, and men are to be used. And the problem is feminism doesn't teach that you shouldn't do that to people, and that men can't do that to women, but women can do that to men, and that's not a problem because all men are dogs, apparently.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the part of all of it that I find funny. Oh, you can do shit like hashtag kill all men, boys are stupid, throw rocks at them, blah blah blah. But they're starting to. I think some of them are starting to wake up to the fact that we've actually put into practice. I've said this a lot. The strongest position you can take in any negotiation is to be able to walk away and mean it, and that's
Yeah.
what a lot of MGTOW do.
Yeah.
And I don't think these women quite understand the concept of that yet.
Yeah, the thing that's going to happen with them is they're going to have an issue where they I got I can't think. I got that Cryptor 27 is trying to get me to talk to him, and that's what that beeping is. What
Yeah,
was
I
it,
know. I mean,
what was we talking about?
well, we were talking about the whole, boys are stupid, throw rocks at them. Basically, it boils down to we are perfectly fine to tell women it's okay to abuse men, but if a man finally loses his shit and hits back, oh, that's horrible. How dare you abuse her?
Yeah, I was talking about that today as well with another that woman actually. That's they never seem to get where they always talk about equality, but they never understand that it's not equal. That men when you point out how unequal it is, they don't seem to understand. Like it doesn't matter how you put it to them, they never understand that
Well, and
there's something wrong.
here's something I've noticed. Here's something I've noticed over the past little while is when it comes down to when they'll say all this crap about men all they want to, but in a lot of situations with a lot of them, when it gets down to where they have to sit face to face and answer for that, some of them will kind of agree with a lot of what you say about how bullcrap it is that men have to do this and men do that, blah 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 blah, or they know they're full of shit and they know they can't answer for what they've been saying, and they will just simply block you.
Yeah. Well, I get a lot of the
I've
buts.
noticed that a lot.
There's usually they'll tell you all this stuff, and then there's a big but at the end. You know. So the but always tells you that everything they just said is complete lies. They'll be like, well, yeah, there's this problem with men and this problem with this and this problem with that, but and then they start telling you all the things they think, and they basically just said with the but they don't really care about any of the shit that men have to deal with because women's problems are the only ones that matter.
Well, one of my answers to that is when I hear the word but, I'm going to say, I usually catch them with, okay, so by saying the word but, you're telling me right now to completely disregard everything you just said before that.
Yep. Exactly, that's what it is. They really feel, most women really feel that men don't have any issues, that we don't have anything we can talk about, that we don't have any, everything we bring up, the problem with like men having to register for selective service before we can even vote, and women don't have to do that. The loss of our genitalia, where they chop off our penis, but they don't do that with women. That kind of shit. You point out this kind of stuff, and there's so much of that kind of stuff that you can point out. You just can like make books about it, and they will look at everything you give them, and then they'll tell you something really stupid, and when you ask for anecdotal evidence, they'll point to like Africa or India or some other country, and it's like, well, that's fine if those countries have problems because of religion and they treat women poorly, but why are you trying to enact laws in this country then? You're talking about these other countries and all the ways men are horrible in those other countries due to religion, yet you're trying to fuck our lives up in America when we don't do those things, but you're saying we do, and then when I ask you for anecdotal evidence, you give me some bullshit in another country.
Well, it's because, I mean, everybody deep down kind of knows this, and I'm going to probably get a lot of people all pissed off for even saying it or thinking it, but if we're honest with ourselves, nobody in a first world country can be really oppressed.
No.
I mean, our governments can make a good go at it, but as far as the people themselves oppressing each other, that's a crock of shit and a half.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if in the way the United States system and basically most developed countries, the way the system works right now, the people who are being, systematically fucked with are men. Basically women have they're in all of our lives, like every aspect of your life, whether you're MGTOW or not. They're trying to control it with everything you do. Every interaction you have throughout your daily life has something to do with a woman's input. She's done something. Some woman somewhere has done something with almost everything you input in life. She's fucked with it and made your life to where you're constantly having to deal with their bullshit, you know? And that's the way they've infected our society, like a virus.
Well, well, and that's why like I learned a long time ago that you know the specified path you thought you had to take, you need to learn how to open up like path A, B, and C rather than just path A being the only way you can go. And if a woman screws with that, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
If you have more, if you actively look to give yourself more options of which way you can go and what you can do, then you can just kind of move around and no matter how hard people screw with you, you've opened those paths so you can do what you're going to do. it's like the old trope in a lot of TV shows and stuff. Well, plan A didn't work. Let's go to plan B. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's like I was talking about last time. I think this is the biggest reason why women, or I didn't know if you've seen that other deal I put out either. I'll talk about that. But women are really getting pissed off because they're trying to move further and further away of what men used to think was sexy, you know? And we're supposed to not judge them for trying to be more and more manly, cutting their hair, walking like a guy, talking like a guy, spitting, farting, you know, basically not being feminine at all. And then there's these transgender women who are trying to go backwards. They're trying to go back to where women were in the 50s and 40s and trying to be these very beautiful women, and that pisses them off. That really gets them pissed off. But they've just came out. They just had a study that came out that I put on my page that in the next 5 years we have all these men that were talking about the womb that they were going to be able to get, that they were going to be able to um, they were going to be able to make like babies on their own with men because we could
Yeah,
with
the
our
artificial one.
yeah, with the artificial womb. Well, what they're talking about now is in the next 5 years, they're going to be able to give men their own womb, which means a transgender woman could have a baby with a man that she's married to, which means that will make women obsolete. So
Yeah, I was saying I
I'm
brought that
wondering
up.
how long it's going to be before women start talking about that and like trying to say like, no, you know, if a man does decide like, hey, I want to think about this, you're a man and you decide to become a transgender. You're, you know, not decide, but you are transgender. So you save your sperm, you become transgender, then you have a uterus implanted inside of you, and then you use your own sperm to impregnate yourself.
Wow, that would give a whole new meaning to the phrase "go fuck yourself." Wouldn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. You know, you could
Well,
carry your
I
own
mean,
baby. You
that's
could carry your own baby. Fuck a woman, right? That'd be awesome.
that's not exactly in my personal plans. But I'm
Yeah, I
sitting here
know.
thinking about it. It's like, you know what,
Well, there's a lot of these
that
young
would like
MGTOWs that are like that. They're like, I want to have kids someday, and blah blah blah. And they're talking about all these ways where they want to have kids, and it's like the easiest way to have a kid is just go adopt one. But if you really want to have a kid, which to my mind it doesn't really make any sense because there's like 172 million orphans in the world, you know, so we don't need any more kids. You can go adopt one. But if you want a kid, within 5 years from now, a transgender woman will be able to have a womb.
yeah, and that's that. You know, I mean, I would rather things personally. I would rather things just stay the way they are. But it's getting to the point where if women just keep getting worse, that's going to really be the only option we have.
Yeah, well, look at all the stuff that's going on with like the women that are going and talking to the UN, you know, and all this stuff. Men don't get to go talk to the UN about men's rights. They laugh at us. They won't even let us in the fucking room. But women can go talk about the wage gap, the bullshit wage gap that's been proven to be wrong, rape culture, which has been proven to be wrong. Everything they talk about is all bullshit. 100% bullshit. They don't have anything to back any of it up. And they
And
still
they
are
know it's
allowed to talk
bullshit.
about this bullshit, you know?
Yeah, then they know it's bullshit. That's the funniest part.
Yeah. They
You know,
keep pointing it out. They keep pointing out these bullshit claims that aren't true. And men can't even go in there and say what we think is wrong with anything that's wrong with our lives, which is way more stuff than's wrong with a woman's life. Because a woman, all she has to do is go to college and find some guy to fuck that will take care of her. And then whether she gets a degree or not, it doesn't matter because her husband's going to end up paying all of her shit. And then when someday she can actually use him as a scapegoat when she gets divorced and has kids, and she says, I don't have any skill set. I haven't worked in 15 years and I can't get hired anywhere. So you have to pay for me, you know, because I'm a victim.
but the problem with that is though, is the more of them that do it and burn the bridges that got them there in the first place, the harder they're making it for the future generations to do that. and they don't
Yeah, well,
realize it.
men are realizing that, which is why they made those laws now, where they have the laws in America where if you live with a woman, it used to be if you live with a woman, like buy a car, put something in both your names, something like that, that you would be married. But now they've actually lessened it to where if you live with a woman for longer than 3 months, you're married to her.
Well, that's why you don't let a woman move in with you.
You know, common law. And
Well,
that's the thing.
common law where I'm from, I think it was you had to live together for 7 years.
Yeah, well,
But
that's what I'm saying.
they've shortened it down.
They've dropped that now. In most states, it's 3 months now, and
Well, so
you don't even have to buy it. It used to be like you'd live together for like you said 7 years, or if you bought a vehicle, or you like the problem that they're having. A lot of people is most people can't afford to rent a house now because it costs so much, so they're renting apartments. And when you rent an apartment, you have to put both of your names on the lease. And by putting your name on a lease with a woman, that basically says you guys are together. And after 3 months, now you're married.
well, so basically, after 3 months, you got to look, or before 3 months is up, you got to look for an excuse to kick her ass out.
Yeah, exactly. If she stays with you for like 6 months, they're actually entitled
Uh,
to get money from you. They can say you owe them money. They can take you to court and get you to pay alimony.
well, I heard a good phrase the other day, and it kind of goes along with the how women do that. My body, my choice.
Yeah,
Somebody said I heard it. I think it was from a dude. I actually heard it. My wallet, my choice.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. You could be like Charlie Sheen and go and fuck a bunch of prostitutes and get HIV. You know, I like what he said about prostitutes a long time ago. His famous saying, you don't pay women for sex, you pay women to leave. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Well, yeah, that's kind of the. I mean, I've said a lot that prostitution is better than marriage because at least then you're getting the payment out up front. You're guaranteed to get laid, and then when you're
yeah.
done, she'll shut up and leave.
Well, I think that's why a lot of women are so pissed off about prostitution too, because they I think a lot of women realize they really don't have a lot to offer in a relationship. I mean, pretty much what women are good for is fucking and cleaning the house and taking care of the kids. So
Well, yeah, but
if you can clean the
they've
house
actually kind
yourself,
of.
then all you need is sex, and you can pay somebody for
Well,
that.
that was actually part of a sort of a list I came up with. Where marriage used to be a partnership, where the woman would cook and clean, take care of the house. Way back in the day, this is when technology wasn't a big thing. But as technology's gotten better, women have forced us to learn how to cook. They've gotten it to where we have to clean our own house half the time, and they've slowly destroyed everything that they cornered the market on until now. Guys are all doing that stuff, and they're slowly getting it toward the only thing they're good for is sex, and they're trying to make that illegal too. They're basically
Yeah.
trying to take away everything of value that they used to have for a man, and then wondering why we'd rather stick our dick in a robot or just use our own hand or something. Well,
Yeah.
you can't get laid. It's like, no, it's not worth the bullshit.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of guys are trying to figure out. I hear all these MGTOW guys talking about how they're wanting to try to figure out a way to sleep with women but not date them, and they don't realize that it's a very complicated psychological game they play with you, and they're not in it to get laid. They're in it to fuck with your life. And if you
Yeah,
think you're
exactly.
going to get an upper hand on them, and they've been doing this for centuries. If you think you're going to be able to get over on a woman and have sex with her and not have her try to fuck with your life, you're an idiot. Because that's their whole game. They've been trained to do that since they were like 5 years old. Their whole game is to fuck with your life. If the only way to get them to not be able to fuck with your life is not deal with them at all.
Well, and that kind of brings us back around to the topic where it's like, pretty soon if a guy hears even so much as, has this company got an HR department? Yeah, they do. Never mind, I'll take my work somewhere else.
Yep. People, they won't even be able to hire anybody because of all the feminist bullshit. Because, like I say, it's this is the fastest growing psychological department in the United States, and you can make the most money out of college. Lots of these people are getting like $60,000 the first year out of college, because all these companies, you can actually start a department that works with HR, and you can go around to companies all around America, and you can get paid thousands of dollars for each time you go in there. I think they did the same thing. The HR department stuff that I'm talking about was just demonstrated very well when you see the movie Charlie's Angels. Remember that movie?
I didn't bother watching it.
In Charlie's Angels, Lucy Liu goes into a company owned by a guy, and she's supposed to be the product analysis person, where she goes in there and she tries to make the work conditions better and all that stuff, but she's just playing a game. But she comes in there in like a black dress, and she looks like a dominatrix, and she's asking the guys what do they think they should do to make the company better and all this stuff. And basically that's what we've come to deal with now. That is actually the trope now. That's what is going on in your environment, and you don't even know it. It's all behind the scenes and through the back door, and most guys don't even know that this stuff is going on in your company, and it's getting worse and worse and worse to where it's becoming very hard. There's lots of men in America that are out of work, and a woman who has less skills than a man can actually get hired, because the people that are running the HR departments are women, and they would rather hire a woman with less skills than a man that has more skills than they need to work there.
Well, they got to have the requisite number of token vaginas in the office.
Yeah.
Thanks,
the problem is the affirmative action is destroying the workplace environment for men. And the problem is men built this country, every country. And without men, there would be no country. And they don't seem to realize that. They really believe that women can do as well and as much as a man. And they're fucking delusional. It's never going to happen.
Well, yeah, and I pointed that out. I pointed that out by saying, well, these women expect us to climb the mountain ourselves and then pull them up, throw the rope down, pull them up. Well, how did we get up there in the first place? We hand over hand climbed up the damn mountain.
Yeah, they want you to help them get up to the top, and then when they get up to the top, they'll try to tell you that they did it themselves.
Yeah.
That's how we live now.
Well, and they seem to get all kinds of pissed off when you don't trust their skills, because you already know that affirmative action is a thing.
Yeah.
And even if a woman has decent skills with her job, she should expect that men are going to question whether or not she got there on her own merits or through affirmative action.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, how most, as a teacher, most of the time I've seen my students, my female students, and even in the psychology departments, because most of them are getting those softball careers, those softball degrees. Yeah. And the problem that I see is most of them cheat. They don't actually do their own work. They actually cheat off of men in the class, and they cheat so poorly that they actually will write down the exact, like usually guys are smart when they cheat. They'll like look at what somebody said, and then they'll write down something about that, but they know the answer now, so they'll just write in their own words something. These women will actually copy word for word what the fucking person said next to them, to where you can easily see. Like when I used to look at tests, I would have them write down what seat they were in, because all my seats were numbered in my classrooms. And then I could look at their tests, and I could grab the guy's test that sat next to them, and you could see the exact same test, and you could see she cheated, you know,
Yeah.
because the easy
And
way
then,
to
you know,
tell the easy way to tell it for a teacher, if you look at those two tests and the woman would say, well, he cheated off of me. Well, it's easy to see, like, they're not always going to be able to cheat off the woman next to them. So if you look at the test that's next to that guy on the other side of him, there's nothing from that test. But
yeah.
on the woman's test, there's something from that guy's test and from the other guy next to her on both sides, which tells you who was cheating.
Mm,
The girl was cheating off both the people between her, you know?
yeah.
So it's very easy to break down who was cheating, and they think they're smart. But most of the time, when these girls get out of college, they really have very little skills because they cheated their way through college, and they got there by having a boyfriend. They'll find a boyfriend in their field or in their class, and they'll cheat off of him and have him help her do all of her homework. And she gets really good grades because she's doing that from a man, and then when she gets out and she graduates, she actually doesn't have most of the skills. She's read a few of the phrases and she knows about maybe one third of what she actually needed to know to graduate with that. And then she'll actually get hired in a department, and they'll hire her just because she's a woman. And then she ends up dragging the company down because she really doesn't know much. And it takes her 3 or 4 years before she actually has enough skill set to even be where somebody is that just got hired that was a man that she cheated off of.
Yeah. And they don't even really realize it either. It's like they don't even stop to think, there is a reason why most guys, change the words when they cheat, because they may not know the answer, but they know that the teacher is probably going to be smart enough to see that, oh, by the way, you know, these, both of these tests are word for word.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Well,
know,
like even if we know,
most
like we
guys
know
don't
there's a
realize
smart person in the class and we're sitting next to the smart person, we'll even know that, like, the teacher knows that we're not smart because we turn in our tests and maybe we get C's on everything, and then all of a sudden we take a test and we get an A. They're obviously going to know something's fucked up. So we'll go through and we'll watch the guy that's really smart, and we'll write down the the answers, and then we'll go through and we'll change a few of the answers so that it looks so that we actually get a B instead of an A, so that it looks like we weren't cheating, because if we get an A and we always get C's, then it'll look bad. They'll know we cheated, but a woman doesn't do that.
it.
They'll fucking sit next to them and they will copy down every fucking thing that guy does, and it's very easy to see they cheated. And it's really easy to I did this to a few girls because this would happen every test. So I would actually tell her I need her to come in and take a test on her own. And what would happen is they would come in and take the test and they would get an F
Yeah.
because they didn't read anything, they didn't study anything. All they did was they knew what was going on in class, but every assignment that they had, they wouldn't read it, they wouldn't study, they would go out and party. All they would be doing is looking for a guy. Most girls are in college to cruise for guys so that they can find a man to marry so that they don't have to work. That's all college is for women. College isn't a career path for women. College is a career path if you're looking for a husband, because that's all they're there for. Men are in college to learn something that they can use to work for 65 years so they can have a life. Women are there to find the guy that's looking for a life so that they can tag off of him and use him as an ATM machine.
Yeah. When I don't understand how women don't understand that, if you're just going to turn a man into an ATM machine sooner or later, even if he spends the rest of his life doing that, there's going to be guys looking around at that and going, "Yeah, fuck that. I don't want to do that."
Yep, that's what's happened. That's what happened in Japan. That's why we have the herbivore men. These men here in Japan have watched their fathers be treated this way for years, and their grandfathers. And they actually, like I say, in Japan, most of the time they end up spending time with their grandparents, and the parents work. Even if the mom doesn't work, the grandparents are taking care of the kids. So they get to see the way the grandparents are, and then they come home and they see the way their mother and father are and see that they're just about the same. And there's no love in their relationship. They never hold hands, they never kiss, they never talk like affectionately to each other. It's very stoic. And when they get to the age where they're thinking about having a girlfriend or something like that, they've actually bred it out of them to where most men nowadays don't want anything to do with a woman because they're like, I don't want to get in a relationship like that. It's like it's so uncaring and unloving, and it's like it's cold, you know.
Yeah, and you know, most of the shit that most of the things that guys do, you know, are to make women happy. Well, when they're not going to be happy or satisfied with anything you do, then you've lost your reason to do anything, really,
Yeah,
especially in a relationship.
yeah. It's it's really sad that they don't see what they're doing to themselves, because eventually what's going to happen is they're, I mean, I guess from a population standpoint, it kind of, maybe it's almost needing to happen, because we have way too many people on the planet, and maybe it's just it needs to happen. Guys need to start being like, I don't want anything to do with a woman, so that the population drops off. Maybe it's probably a good thing, but it's eventually, like I say right now, in most countries, there's like 3 women for every 1 man, which means there's there's a surplus of women, and they don't seem to get that, and they don't understand that men have the choice of women, and we're still choosing none. you know, which means that they're even if all the women was able to marry every man that there was, there would still be 2/3 of women that don't have men, you know. And when those men, that's what kind of pisses them off about MGTOW as well, is because when men go their own way, that means even women that think they might be able to get a man because they're so sexy and they think they're so hot, but their attitude is fucked up, they're still not going to be able to find a man.
Yeah, uh, it makes me weep for the human race.
Yeah. Well, as a psychologist, it doesn't for me.
Oh well.
Yeah. I think in a way it's good, but it's also in a way bad, because I don't think we'll ever learn anything from it. You know, I, it seems like what's going to happen is these women are going to keep fighting and keep fucking with everybody and never realize what they're doing, and they're going to shoot their own selves in the foot, and then they are going to blame men for it, and then when it's all said and done, they're if shit, that's not cool. Oh well, I accidentally clicked it off. Not cool.